Hey guys, Mark Stoos with Accelerating Value, your weekly podcast in which we talk about all kinds of stuff related to value creation. If you can find another podcast out there that does what we do, I'll pay you $10, right? So, you won't find it, right? This is strangely enough, right now, the only podcast in which we bring in all kinds of people from all kinds of functions, many different career paths, and we talk about value, how you create it, how you protect it, how you invest in it, how you prove it, right? All that kind of stuff. And the idea here, and many of you who already listen to us every week already know this, is that we're here to help you think this through, right? And there's a bunch of guests here that talk about it from their point of view. And our goal is that you will find something inspiring, something interesting, and something very provocative about whatever it is that they share with us today. So today is really, really cool. Okay. Unusually cool, even for this podcast. So we have Erica Brinker, who is the new CMO of a really super cool part of Honeywell. Now, in full disclosure, I hired Erica when I was CMO of Honeywell Aerospace, right? Long, long time ago. Well, not that long ago. But anyway, she made a huge impression. It was like the ultimate cold call email, right? Basically, this is who I am. This is what I'll do for you. This is how I'm going to change the world at Honeywell if you let me in the door. And her track record has totally lived up to the hype. So, welcome, Erica. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me. I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but I appreciate it.
Well, I think you already have, right? I mean, that's a pretty accurate rendition of what happened 10 years ago. So, why don't you tell everybody you're the new CMO of what exactly?
So, I'm the CMO of the Honeywell Connected Enterprise, which is the software business within Honeywell. And so we call ourselves the biggest little startup. Everything, all things software for our customers. So if you think about the customer base that Honeywell has served for a long time, industrials, your oil and gas, all of those same customers are ones that we are now supplying with software solutions, analytics, insights for their assets, their processes, and their people.
Yeah, so this was kind of a glimmer in the mind's eye of the Honeywell leadership 10 years ago.
That's right.
Right? And Dave Cote, who's the former chairman and CEO of Honeywell, this was something that he was really kind of energized around. And there was sort of this internal change management effort around this, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I
Probably
was.
more information than anything else, but yeah.
No, he actually shared something that I wasn't aware of when I interviewed him a few weeks ago. I didn't realize he actually established the Atlanta office with that whole software presence. He actually handpicked the office, so I wasn't actually aware of that until I interviewed him a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's true. So one of the things that he always used to say to me about this, and it was never just like to me, it was always like I was in a meeting with a bunch of other people and he happened to be, at the top of the table, was why are we in the business of arms and legs only when the brain is the most important part? Right?
Absolutely.
Now, kind of interesting, right? And somewhat provocative, and I think it was intentionally provocative at the time. So let's talk about that as kind of a jump. Use that as a jumping off point, right?
Sure.
So software creates value by taking what human beings are capable of and scaling it dramatically through automation, through You can also eliminate a lot of human errors this way. There's a lot of things that great software can do, right? Not to replace human beings, but to augment the decision-making capability and the intelligence of human beings. How are you guys thinking about that right now, right? This idea of the hybrid piece.
Yeah, I think it can be when you think about just traditional industrial customers, the idea of bringing software can be very daunting to a traditional manufacturer. But when you think about it, all of the kind of what you might consider edge nodes, all of the assets, the equipment is already, it's been sending off data for a long, long time. It just hasn't been harnessed. And so our software has the ability not only to pull down the data and aggregate it, but because we've understood these industries for over 100 years, we also know what to do with it, because lots of analytics firms can just track analytics, but unless you know what those analytics really mean, they don't turn into actionable insights. And so you talked a little bit about how it augments what the worker can do. When you think about if you could provide actionable insights for a maintenance event, for example, you wouldn't have to have workers with such high skill sets if they were told every next step. Or if you were doing preventative maintenance instead of a downtime event. And so all of these things are cost savings, but they're also really hard to prove savings of something that wouldn't happen. So even doing something as simple as baseline data before you take that next step to do something software oriented, I think is an incredible first step. And you can see, because there's cyber attacks have been a very hot topic lately. I can tell you personally, I was impacted by it in something silly that I wouldn't have guessed what actually happened. So I'm supposed to get new carpet installed in my home yesterday. And the vendor called me and said, unfortunately, we can't come because we don't know where your carpet is. And I thought that maybe they should explain. And they said, we got hit by a cyber attack, so we actually can't locate it. So then they called back a little bit later and they said, well, we found the carpet, but it didn't pass inspection because the cyber attack actually impacted the manufacturing equipment that makes the carpet. And so it's not passing inspection. And so, these are the kinds of conversations that our customers are having with us every day, because they want digital transformation, but they don't want it at the expense of being able to do their business. So when you think about the downtime that this company is now incurring because of a cyber attack, because they haven't taken the proper steps. And so what we try to do is help our customers not only connect their enterprise, but also secure it so that you're able to run your business more efficiently and more safely.
Absolutely. So I would just extend this a little bit further and to say that in that specific situation, right, they also weren't able to charge your credit card for that installation, right?
No.
When they wanted to. So there is a direct impact on cash flow.
That's right.
Right. Now they know that you're probably ultimately going to be their customer, and that 2 weeks from now there's going to be a new install date and all that kind of stuff. But when you're a smaller business, right, they could have really counted on having that cash 2 weeks earlier, right?
That's right. Real business, bottom line impact. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of times we tend to think about value in terms of creating massive amounts of transformational value. And that certainly happens. And it can't be minimized. It's important. But it's also all those base hits. I mean, remember how Cody always used to talk about
The
base
singles
hits?
and doubles.
Yeah, singles and doubles, right? And that's what he was talking about, right? It also de-risks a lot of things when you have a lot of singles and doubles.
That's right. Yeah, and I think sometimes the digital transformation piece can seem daunting because you think about, okay, do I have to replace my IT system? Do I need to completely overhaul all of my equipment? Do I need to, there are all different sorts of things that go through a C-level executive's mind. And what we try to assure them is that that's not always the case. We do need to make sure that we are providing small changes. Like you said, those singles and doubles can make a big change. In the example I was just using that happened yesterday, cybersecurity is a very small first step that you can take. Another step that you can take is possibly just looking at one part of, your assets. Look at one manufacturing site, test it out, see how it works. And I think piloting is often underestimated. You can see small changes, and then you can figure out, hey, can we scale this?
Absolutely. How do you apply that same logic path to marketing for Honeywell?
Oh, wow.
Particularly, you're a long cycle business, right?
Right.
So in the way that you create value is asynchronous with sales.
Yes.
So how do you think about it right now?
We think about it in a couple ways, because there are some businesses that, especially in the software business, when in the true SaaS, is shorter cycle, particularly when you talk about building management. That's something that in a matter of hours, we can hook up and start pulling down data and show value. But when you talk about oil refineries, that's something where that sales cycle is quite long and the process is long. So we think about it in a couple of ways. We try to do things short term to try to make sure that we're getting new leads for our salespeople. We try to do lead to revenue. We have a weekly dashboard that we're looking at. There are things that we look at daily, like things like search terms, like we want to make sure that those search terms are working really hard for us. Is our programmatic marketing working for us? Are we making sure that we have the right audience? So are we over-indexing on a particular market? Sometimes we might have too much budget. We're realizing that we're getting too many leads that our sales team can't even handle. So we have to make those adjustments on the fly. And that's something where it takes a lot of care. And the other thing that I'd say that doesn't happen in a vacuum anymore, and especially since sales teams have become much more sophisticated around how to leverage marketing, it's that constant partnership. Are we producing enough leads to keep your inside sales team busy? When a certain kind of profile of a lead comes through, when you talk about lead scoring, do we automatically hand it off because it's a customer we've been waiting to hear from? Do we handle that one very, with care? It's not just about lead scoring. And so there's all different ways that we look at it. And the thing that even in HCE, where we have different LOBs and we're trying to address each of those different products, we really do have a bit of a different approach with each of those, because either the level of sophistication with the sales team, the existence of an inside sales team or not, the amount of salespeople that we have in different regions. We don't want to entice customers that have no help of ever being talked to. So we want to make sure that we deliver on that promise, even in marketing as well.
How do you, particularly in the wake of 2020, how do you think about the value of brand when it comes to Honeywell's business?
I think about it differently than I did 3 years ago, that's for sure. So when I led the brand campaign, the Future Shaper brand campaign that we launched about 2.5 years ago, I think for us it was first in education. The first thing that we did was find out, what do people around the world, and not just people, customers, B2B, leadership, C-level, V-level, what do they think about Honeywell, or do they think of us at all? And if they do, what do they think of us for? And so that baseline survey exercise was incredibly important to us in order to make sure that we understood where our starting point was. Because as we've been making this transition from a pure play industrial manufacturer to a software industrial, we wanted to make sure that we were striking the right tone with customers, and also that we were beginning to be in the consideration set for our customers when they thought about software. And so what we found out is that we were a trusted partner, and that we were going to have to do some work to be considered as a software player. And I think some of the things that we've done to bolster our brand is to showcase the places where we've had success in software, where we've been driving value for our customers, and to make sure that we're really showing those wins and making sure that we're driving the value that we're doing in our own business. By the way, we call it dog fooding here. It's a software term, right? We are trying our own technology, and we have it implemented across our building space and our own manufacturing, making sure that we're sweating our assets as much as possible. And so we first prove it to ourselves before we go out to customers to make sure it's working as well. And so when we think about brand now, I think we've done a great job of making sure that we've been consistent on the message, but also delivering what we've said we can in terms of a product that really provides value to our industrial customers.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think people undervalue eating their own dog food, right? And it has so many different areas of value, but one of the biggest ones ever is psychological, particularly for the sales teams, and that is that if you've seen it work, it's no longer theoretical to you, right? And you
That's
can
right.
sell it with a level of conviction that is fundamentally not possible to do if you don't actually know, right? If you're taking
Absolutely.
someone else's word for it, right? So it's a very yeah, I really agree with that. So let's talk a little bit more about risk. So part of brand, right, from the outside in perspective, is around confidence and trust, right? I believe that you can do what you say you can do, and I believe that under circumstances that where we might not be aligned, you'll still treat me well, right? That's
That's
sort of
right.
what that is. Um, how do you think about the way that you do business from the Honeywell side? Okay, and then how do you think about kind of what you're trying to achieve out there, and how does so risk could be seen as friction, right? And so, like, if you look at the latter part of sales cycles, right, there's a lot of due diligence and risk mitigation that's happening right there on the part of the prospect, right? And actually, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is they're trying to de-risk the vendor as a choice. How do you kind of think about all of this when you're putting together a marketing campaign? How do you realize your own risks, right? And then how do you think about your customers' risks as opposed to what a lot of marketers do, which is to think about the upside?
Yeah, I kind of think of them as two sides of the same coin, because we talked a little bit, I mentioned piloting, and pilots are the ultimate weapon in de-risking anything that you do, whether you're talking about marketing or talking about implementing new software. The idea of being able to try before you buy, or even you're buying, but you're buying on a smaller scale, and then you're seeing if it works, and then you can make it go broader. I really like dipping our toe in, finding the unique use case, and then really seeing where it works. I think sometimes as marketers, we want a one size fits all for everything we do. And that, especially in Honeywell, we're highly functionalized. We want something to be able to work for everyone. And we do try to find similar tools and ways to be scalable. But at the same time, the same tool doesn't work for different challenges. And so what we often think about is, okay, if we're going to introduce a new technology, or if we're going to try a new programmatic marketing tool, what is the actual use case where we think it's ideal, and why would it be better than something we're already using? And you have to think about, well, can we support this? Is this another person that I have to bring on board? in order to be able to do this technology? What's the ROI on it? And so you can start to kind of read the tea leaves by piloting before you say, okay, we must do this for every single program. And we actually really try not to do that, because what we've found is everything doesn't work for every challenge. And so we do try to, for example, there are some businesses where events and community management are still incredibly important, even through COVID. It's been these virtual events and this idea of community and being able to talk about the product and experience the product is really important. In other businesses, that has definitely not been the case. It's been much more of, how do you make my operation work from a distance? And so we have just found that depending on how the world has changed a little bit, we've had to adjust with it and just really map out those use cases so that we make sure that we're fitting the right tool to the right challenge.
So last question. So this is the question that we ask every guest pretty much at the end of the podcast, because it's really important to acknowledge that we all create value on a very broad front, and the way we do it in business is just one part of that equation. How do you think about yourself personally in terms of the value that you create for the people around you, for your community, for your family? Are you planful about it? How does it happen? And how are you thinking about this right now, particularly in the wake of 2020?
Well, I had a baby last year, so a true COVID baby, born in COVID, still in COVID. So my roles changed. I was a teacher last year. I was on maternity leave and I was teaching my daughter kindergarten. When we ended up moving into first grade, it was, okay, we're going to online school. And so your role changes quite a bit, because the way that you manage your household and the way you manage your job and how all of us had to be able to coexist in the same house all at the same time provides its own unique set of challenges. I do see my most important job as being the CEO of my house. My stress reliever is cooking for my family. I love to give them great food, and Honeywell has afforded me to be able to travel all over the world, so I get to make all different things that I've experienced. I love making Indian and Korean, which I have enjoyed in some of my travels, and I like to share. I think the intersection, that COVID has really introduced the intersection of your personal life and your professional life. Right? It's unavoidable. We've all met each other's children now. I'm surprised that my baby's not here on camera, but we all have now learned about each other on a different level. And honestly, I think it develops another level of trust with the team when they get to know a little bit more about you. And but it also makes it so that work is kind of permeating every part of your personal life too, because your laptop's always open. So we continue to struggle with the balance, but I think as things are starting to return to normal, we'll start to see people in person and get back to a little bit of a normal balance where you see family at home and you see work people in the office. But I do think, probably travel won't be as much as it was before. And we realized how much we can actually do virtually through tools just like this.
Right. No, I completely agree with that. I gotta ask this question. So, and this is a serious question for a lot of people, particularly right now. We talk about work-life balance. That was kind of an idea before COVID, right? Work-life integration is probably more kind of the way people talk about it today.
That's right.
Where are the boundaries? Like, you're a CMO, so you're dealing with it personally, but you're also got teams around the world that are grappling with it. Where do you think the boundary is between life and work today? How should people kind of...
Yeah, I think that's a really hard question. It's one that I am challenged with myself every day. My attitude with my team and for myself has been, if I feel like I'm getting my work done at the level that I think is acceptable and that I'm exceeding my expectations and that my team is doing well, To me, it doesn't matter when the work is getting done. If somebody needs to take their kid, like as I do, to tennis twice a week, I can jump back online later. I don't want to miss those moments. And so I think the ideal outcome is where you feel like you're nourishing both sides of your life. It's, are you making sure that your family knows that you're present? And then in your work life, are you getting what you need done? And I think you do have to be ruthless about priorities at work. It's easy to consider everything a priority.
Yeah.
And so what are the most important things that you need to get done? And that's a challenge. And that also takes a separate amount of time to even prioritize. You can't just mindlessly go through your to-do list because you'll find yourself not working on the most important things. And so I think it's probably that ruthless prioritization, taking time to prioritize what's important at home and what's important at work.
Yeah, I would really agree with that. So my own experience as a CEO of a startup is that, ruthless prioritization around what creates value and what has to be done now because maybe it has a longer time to value. And so every time I delay it, I'm delaying the value realization even further into the future, right? Super, super important. Erica, thank you so much. This has been just a great conversation, everything I wanted it to be. So I hope you
Thank
guys
you.
really, really got a lot out of it. I know I did.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
You bet.